Doug was born into a prominent Peterborough sporting family. He came up through the Peterborough Community Church Hockey League and honed his lacrosse skills at the summer lacrosse schools. He was a member of the Peterborough James Gang, who won the Canadian Junior Lacrosse Championship, Minto Cup, in 1981, 82, and 83. Doug was named the 1983 Minto Cup MVP, a prolific scorer. He won the 1984 O.L.A. Junior A Series top scoring title, as well as the league MVP. He was a member of the 1984 Mann Cup champion Peterborough Lakers. He amassed a total of 889 points during his junior lacrosse career. He played for the Peterborough Petes, scoring 309 points. In his final year, he scored 45 goals and had 79 assists in just 61 games to place third in OHL scoring. Along with his impressive scoring statistics, he logged 578 minutes in penalties. That wasn't one season, right?
No.
Okay, just checking. A skilled hockey player and a fierce competitor, he impressed the St. Louis Blues, who signed him to a pro contract. During his career, Doug played in the NHL with the St. Louis Blues, Winnipeg Jets, and Philadelphia Flyers, the Moncton Hawks of the AHL, and the Peoria Rivermen of the IHL. He played in 355 NHL games, scoring 135 points, and had an outstanding career with the Peoria Rivermen. In 722 games, he had 796 points, which included two 97-point seasons. He won the IHL's Turner Cup in 1985, was a league all-star, and ended his career as a player-coach. Doug was named a charter inductee to the Peoria Rivermen Hall of Fame, and his number 9 sweater is one of only 3 retired in the history of the team. Doug Evans, thank you so much for sitting down with us to talk about your vast sports career. Just what sticks out to you most hearing that read back to you?
Well, how fast it went by. When you start a career, you don't never know how long it's going to be, but when it's over, you look back and you say it just flew by. But you do remember a lot of the goods. There's also some bads in there and stuff like that. But it was just, for me, my dream as a kid was always to grow up and play in the NHL, and I was able to accomplish that. So, like I said, it's I know that a lot of people have that inspiration, and not everybody gets the chance for that. But being able to live my dream was a great chance.
And you mentioned to me beforehand you were the second youngest of 6.
Yeah, there were 6 boys in our family, so you really had to learn to be one of the first to the dinner table. But our whole family was involved in sports, hockey and lacrosse. So I think I attribute a lot of my hockey and lacrosse skills that I had a good bunch of brothers to follow on, and trying to be as good as them at a young age. And I think I was able to accomplish a little bit of that. And
the nickname The Brat, how early did that get attached to you? Was that not until junior hockey, or did that come from being one of the younger Evans boys?
No, it was junior hockey. I believe it was Mike Brophy was the first one. I think he was the Examiner writer back then that gave me that name. And there's still people around that obviously that followed the Petes back when I was there back in the 80s that still I walk around and they'll call me the Brat, and people that remember it. And obviously it was so it was one of those things around Peterborough that that name stuck.
So you are the 2nd overall in Pete's all-time scoring. You're up there in O.L.A. junior lacrosse scoring, just really all the scoring categories and everything you ever participated in. It seems like you're near the top. How did you learn that growing up? From your playing with your brothers, you learned how to score, but just how? Well,
it's learning how to obviously shoot and catch was the big thing in lacrosse. That was one thing that constantly, I could honestly swear that when the weather was good, we were never in the house. We were either out in the street, in the backyard. We were always playing a game. And if it was just the 6 boys in our family, obviously from top to bottom, there's 10 or 11 years as far as ages, but we'd kind of try and split the teams up and have a game in the backyard, and we'd make it very competitive. So, and there would be some times that someone may have needed a stitch or two when the game was over. And you just learn to be, like when you're playing against your older brothers and older friends of your brothers, that you learned a lot more at an earlier age as far as maybe a little more toughness and stuff like that. Being able to, if you didn't take it, you couldn't play. So you just kind of, if you got knocked down, you got back up again.
When you did start competing against, players your own age, did it feel easy for you having that experience with your brothers?
I think it did. I know that when I started pro hockey, when you really see the age difference between yourself and the guys that you're starting to play against, it didn't seem to bother me as much as it did some other people. And whether it just kind of, you brought in that your background of playing against your brothers and their friends as a kid, and it didn't seem to bother me as much as it did other people.
So you're growing up in Peterborough. Where did you grow up in Peterborough?
Well, we're central Peterborough. Like we lived under the water tower. My mother worked at GE. My dad worked at GM. So we were St. Alphonsus kids growing up, and then so we were central South End type family.
So where did you spend most of your time? Just I know you had lacrosse everywhere all around you in the South End and the central areas, and then not a lot of baseball or anything, but mostly lacrosse. Do you just gravitate right there to some open air lacrosse all the time?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we all started. I started at the Civic Arena back in the day before they tore that down, and then they built the Evinrude after that. So where we were, I mean, we used to walk to both rinks. I mean, we never got rides. We usually carried our bags, and up the hill we went to Evinrude, or down the road we went to the Civic Arena. So, like I said, it was a great, like, as kids growing up and being able to, like, we played road hockey all the time. We had Turner Park, one street over, where a lot of people laugh now because they say when the Evanses showed up, they got off the ice. But we'd always have teams over there, and again, the games that we played over there were pretty fierce, and it was sometimes there was people chasing each other down the road if someone got hit the wrong way. So it was very interesting growing up, which things you don't see nowadays.
Let's go through the seasons with you growing up. We'll just go with the transition, lacrosse to hockey, lacrosse to hockey. I'm guessing those were really the only two sports back and forth for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so there wasn't much transition. It's just basically you went from running shoes to skates and back and forth. And I know we tried, my brother Mark and I tried to play baseball one year, and I think about the third practice, the coach came to us and says, we'd like to have you here, but you can't play baseball. And we heard later on that the lacrosse people went to them and said, just tell them that they can't play baseball, they got to play lacrosse. So hence we came back and played. We just wanted to do something different, but it probably wouldn't have worked out for us. We just wanted to try it, but inevitably we came back and played, and this was in junior lacrosse, so we probably ended up winning the Minto Cups right after that too, because we did have some pretty good teams back then.
What are the fondest memories for you? Is it the summers playing lacrosse or the winters playing hockey?
You know what, I mean, obviously Peterborough's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. We've guys that in lacrosse and hockey, you grow up with them since you're 5 years old, and you become really good friends as you get older and stuff like that. And obviously you run into everybody. The Mann Cup here that we just won, you get to see a lot of the guys that you played with back then, because they're coming to the games. They're bringing their wives and then their kids and stuff like that. So it's always nice to come back and see those guys and catch up with those guys, because you don't see them a lot anymore. You see them a lot more back when we were kids. You just don't see them as much anymore, with obviously families and work and everything else. So it's always nice when all of us guys get together and tell old stories, and do you remember this, do you remember that, and half the things I don't remember, thank God, but it's always interesting.
Do you remember the rivalries? Because just growing up, I'd imagine back then you're pretty much playing against the same kids through hockey season and lacrosse season. If they're guys from Whitby or guys from Oshawa, they're probably following the exact same route as you, where they're just going along playing in the summer and then hockey in the winter.
Yeah.
Do you remember those rivalries taking you through, and would there even be any names that you were going up against that you went up with all the way through?
Not really. There wasn't very many guys that played both hockey and lacrosse. They were probably good athletes and good players, but there was just more better hockey players sometimes than there were lacrosse players. But the rivalries were more against, obviously when I was playing with the Petes, it was Oshawa.
Yeah.
I don't know who it is with the Petes now, whether it's Belleville or I don't think Belleville's in the league anymore. But I don't know who the rivalries are now. But it was really big back then for some reason. But yeah, I mean that was it. Just seeing them the next year and playing against those guys, and then hopefully one year that you played that those guys weren't there anymore, because obviously there were some rough, tough games back in those days.
You mentioned just having the dream of playing in the NHL. I know pretty much every little kid that puts skates on and steps out onto the ice, that's going to cross their mind. What was the point where you thought, this could be a reality?
You know what? I mean, I got very lucky when I came back and played overage with the Petes. I just came from an NHL camp, which I thought I had a very good camp at. The one thing about hockey and lacrosse, when you transition especially at the level of junior, like you're in shape all year round, because I know that a couple of the Minto Cups that we won in Peterborough, I remember Dick Todd being at the game, and he'd see me after the game, and he'd come down and say, "Don't worry about coming to training camp for a couple of days." Well, I'd be there the next day. So I go from winning the Minto Cup one day, they'd have the ice down the next day, and I'd be at the tryouts the next day. So I mean, just and you know, I always found that being in shape because of that, and then going to pro camps, because back in the day, it's like you learn this as you go along. A lot of the veterans in the pro camps, they use training camp to get in shape. That's not the way it works anymore. So the fact that I was in shape going into those camps, I think really helped me, and you know, just getting a foot in the door with St. Louis, where the year that I went to St. Louis's camp, and they wanted me to stay in Peoria because that's where their farm team was, and we ended up winning the championship, and I was the leading scorer on the team as a rookie. So I was able to get my foot in the door there. Barclay Plager, who was one of the coaches with St. Louis, which prominent in Peterborough when he played with the Petes, and obviously he had a lot of the helping hand to get me the tryout there, and I was just kind of excited that I was able to, with his help, to start my career in pro hockey, and then eventually get myself into the NHL.
Did you notice the Peterborough connection a lot of the way through your pro hockey career?
Oh yeah. It's if you're a Peterborough Pete and you play against any of the guys, or you run into any of the guys, and some of the guys that I ended up playing against were younger than me that weren't with the Petes when I was with the Petes, but they obviously, when you know of the ex-Petes that are in the NHL, and you always have a chance out on the ice, whether it's through warm-up or if you get a chance to line up against them in the game, you always give them a little tap and say, "Hey, how you doing? Hope glad things are going well," and yeah, it's kind of neat that way.
So you were undrafted to the OHL, undrafted to the NHL. I know a lot of players feel pressure playing for their hometown team, whether it be in Peterborough or Sudbury, if they're going to stay home and play hockey.
Yeah.
How did you end up with the Petes? Was it just a tryout and then there you were? Did you get recruited after not being drafted, or did you reach out to them? Just tell me how that went.
You know, that's a good question. I just really actually believe that I think Dave Dryden was the coach the first year that I started with the Petes, and I think it was Dick Todd that actually kind of knew of me because of lacrosse, and he knew that I was a decent hockey player too. And you know, I think because playing junior lacrosse here, and obviously you've seen the crowds that they had with the Lakers. I mean, winning a couple of Minto Cups here and having standing room only and 3 rows back at the old rails that they used to have here, playing in front of people, when you're on the floor or on the ice, you really don't acknowledge it until something happens. So whether you score or fight or whatever and stuff like that, but it didn't really bother me playing at home. It was actually, I thought it was kind of cool. But you know, obviously, I think Dick Todd gave me the stepping stone here with the Petes, and I just was lucky enough to take it right to the top.
When you didn't get drafted, were you upset? Did that impact you in any way?
Not really. I mean, I didn't really know, other than I knew that I wanted to play in the NHL. Getting the chance with the Petes didn't bother me. I mean, I would have found something else to do. I'm really glad that I didn't have to get a factory job. That was one of those things with my parents both working in factories. It's when you grow up, you say to yourself, you know, I don't want to work in a factory. I don't want to work in a factory. And you almost start, like, your dreams come, like, you know, when dreams can come true, it's kind of ironic how it all came about. And I didn't have to work in a factory, and I ended up making it in hockey. And I'd like to say life ever, you know, it was great ever happened. It was a lot of hard work. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a lot of hard work. Getting an opportunity, getting your foot in the door makes a big difference. It's just how far you take it after that.
I got to ask again, just revisit this, but you went on to become the second leading scorer in Pete's history. Why do you think you didn't get selected just to the OHL? And when you were playing hockey at that age, why do you think you didn't get, I guess, picked by any of the teams and you had to find your own way?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Probably that's why. I mean, I wouldn't want to be a scout anyway, and I don't know. I'm just glad that I was able to overcome a lot of things where people who were drafted and stuff like that maybe played 1 year pro, and he said, well, obviously I'm not going to make it, and I just kind of stuck with it. And again, I remember my dad was playing golf with Bart Plager, because Bart used to come back to Peterborough and play at Kawartha Golf Course in the summer times, and I was caddying for my dad one day. I used to love going out and caddying, walking around Kawartha. And I just happened to get talking to Mr. Plager, and Bart just said to me, he goes, so you were like the third leading scorer in the OHL, so whose camp are you going to? I said, I'm not going. I said, I'm actually preparing for lacrosse, because lacrosse was starting. And he goes, so you're not going to any NHL camp? I said, no. So anyways, within a day or two, I had a phone call from the new GM at St. Louis, which was Ron Caron, and they faxed me, or not faxed me, they FedExed me tryout papers, and the rest was history.
That's wild. So
Yeah.
just one decision one day to go caddy with your dad. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I guess
So there's, I mean, I always tell people I can write a small book about things and stuff like that, but it's just interesting how a lot of things came about, and I was, again, very fortunate to cross paths with the right people.
deals get made on the golf course, but not often between the caddy and somebody else playing.
No,
right?
that's right. That's right. I usually told them what club to hit, but not. But yeah, like I said, it was like I said. I owe a lot to Mr. Plager for getting me that tryout, and hence I got a chance to meet his brother Bobby, because Bobby was also in St. Louis, and then obviously Billy, the youngest brother, was living in Peterborough, and maybe Billy had a little say in it too. I'm sure Billy saw me play hockey, but I really I owe a lot to the Plagers for getting me started in pro hockey.
So you already mentioned that lacrosse kept you in shape, and staying in shape kept you ready for the start of hockey season. I'm guessing that would have really come to benefit you when maybe things fell into your lap just like that. Not that there wasn't hard work that went into it, but were there any other situations where the stars just seemed to align? I know you kind of indicated there might be a few more. What would there be?
You know what I mean. It was just kind of one of those things that I felt calm and normal about it, because that's what I wanted to do, and just the way things happen. I always said to myself, they happen for a reason. You know, whether it was from me dreaming as a kid, and just getting to a point where people were able to see me, and like I said, I just thought everything kind of aligned themselves, and as I got my foot in the door and up to the level of the NHL, and I just said, I did it. Mm-hmm. And now when you get there, it's your job to stay there as long as you can. So that's kind of the hardest part, is once you do get there, is staying there.
You stayed there for a nice long stretch, and you kept playing afterwards as well in the AHL. We'll get to that, or pardon me, the IHL and the ECHL. But when you're in the NHL, just going from year to year, what was your mindset trying to stay in the game? What were you focusing on?
Well, obviously I got married in between, had kids, so everything starts to change and stuff like that as your kids get older and whatnot. And then the biggest thing again is that, obviously, because I wasn't able to play lacrosse in the off seasons anymore, was staying in shape, being ready to go to camp in shape, and just as much of getting on the ice as much as you could in the summertime to have yourself ready and be more ready than the other guys that were at camp, because once you're there, someone's always looking to take your job. And that's what they tell you, that right from the start. Someone wants your job. You just can't let them take your job. So, and like I said, growing up with my brothers, I don't know whether, I don't consider myself a tough guy, but I was a scrappy guy, and you had to learn to fight for things at an early age. So I just used whatever I could to keep me at that spot. How
did you feel going back to the summer knowing you couldn't play lacrosse, or how did that impact you?
It was hard. I remember a lot of guys had to move on after junior with jobs and stuff like that. So, I know, like, when I talked to a lot of the older guys now, like the Johnny Grants and, a lot of these guys that were playing senior at the time. I think Peterborough could have had some much better senior lacrosse teams back then for an era. That because myself, and I know that the Larry Floyds and the Batley, there's the teams, the guys that we had that we rolled over every time in junior, a lot of them didn't go and play senior because of work and moving away and stuff like that. So we probably could have had a much stronger era of lacrosse championships in Peterborough if everybody would have stayed here, but that's what happens.
Yeah, that's part of it, obviously. Do you wish that if lacrosse was on the same level as the NHL in terms of popularity, the potential for a career and to make a living, do you feel like you would have been playing lacrosse instead of hockey?
Yes.
Yeah.
Lacrosse is still my favorite sport. I still like, I mean, obviously the game has changed a lot now with the offense-defense format, but, you know, back in the day when you played both ends of the floor and you got whacked at one end, you made sure that the guy that was whacking you at the one end is going to get it back at the other end. So, and I miss that part of it. And the fact that the guys that we had that we rolled over in those years, I mean, like, again, I mean, it was a phenomenal bunch of guys that we had that we just knew that no one could beat us if we concentrated on what we were doing.
And you had the Peterborough confidence, I guess, that a lot of teams have had coming through here. Just the more and more I talk to people that were playing on those teams growing up, they seem to share that one thing where they all know they can win all the time. But one thing that you kind of pointed on there was your scrappiness in hockey, and in lacrosse, making sure people get it at the other end. Can you compare how aggressive or how much more difficult one sport is compared to the other in terms of aggressiveness? Are they the same, on the same level? Which sport was more, I guess, violent?
Well, back in the lacrosse days, we used wooden sticks. So I think you really walked away from lacrosse with a lot more bruises, whether they were on your arms, your legs, or wherever, because of the way the game was played. I think injuries in hockey, which I was unfortunately sustained a few of them, were the head injuries and concussions and stuff like that. Where that was, like I said, other than that, I really didn't have any injuries. I knock on wood through my hockey career. Didn't really break anything other than, like I said, a few concussions here and there. But obviously, they're two different dynamics as far as injuries in lacrosse and injuries in hockey and how they happen.
Yeah, everything's fast moving in hockey, where you're station to station in lacrosse, and you can only run so fast versus being on the frictionless ice. I guess that's where the concussions come from.
Yep.
Violence in both sports still prominent in your era. What's harder, a hockey fight or a lacrosse fight?
Well, I'll guarantee it's a hockey fight, because obviously you have to learn how to fight on your skates, which is a little different than fighting on your feet. So yeah, there is a little learning curve in there trying to do that. But obviously, you know, some guys that aren't in the league anymore, but there's some guys that made it quite the career being able to fight in hockey that weren't maybe the greatest players, but they could get by with their skills. But they helped the team through games and win games with their toughness.
Mm-hmm. What's more dangerous, a lacrosse fight or a hockey fight?
I think the hockey fights, because when you're wearing skates and you fall to the ice and stuff like that, I mean, your hands everything's kind of open to skate stepping on you and stuff like that. Or, I mean, I was actually on the ice the one night when Clint Malarchuk, Buffalo there. I was with St. Louis at the time, and I was kind of glad I was on the part of the ice that I was, because they basically, when the incident happened, they directed everybody to the benches, and then they cleared the ice and everything else.
Did the game continue?
No, they didn't. I think they got everybody off the ice. They sent everybody to the boards. They got him situated. Everybody went to the dressing rooms. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they called the game at that time. I can't remember, to be exact. But it was one of those things, a freak thing. But it was skates, right? And now you see a lot more of the safety stuff with goalies wearing neck bands and stuff to kind of. Hopefully that stuff doesn't happen again.
I can't. I didn't know you were there for that. That had to be devastating to watch. Any injury is hard when you see not necessarily your brother, but somebody that's in the same battle as you in the same profession. How was the mood for everybody just to process what had just happened? Maybe you guys didn't know the scope of it, like he was near death.
Yep.
But what was it like just to be in there and witness that and experience it?
Well, there's a lot of guys. I think Malarchuk was from the West, if I'm not mistaken. But like, there's a lot of guys that like in the NHL. I mean, if you're from the West, everybody knows everybody. If you're from the Ontario Hockey League, everybody knows everybody. So there was a lot of guys I remember in the dressing room that were trying to find out how he was and this and that. And obviously, once everybody found out that he was going to be okay, it was a relief. But it was a scary moment. I mean, to be, kind of traumatized, by being there first of all and seeing the everything that was going on. It was a bit of a scary moment.
Yeah, it's infamous, right? Mm-hmm. It's Richard Zednik went through a similar situation, but yeah, an infamous moment. Okay, that's.
Yeah.
Other than that, like, that's an interesting highlight for your hockey. You're not a highlight for your hockey career, but it has to be something that really sticks out to you. When we were talking about which sport is more dangerous, I was trying to just get a gauge on how you were out there competing with people, but I did not see that coming. Okay.
Yeah.
Pushing forward through that, was it hard to get back on the ice?
No, I don't think so. I mean, obviously, once you know that the person's going to be okay and stuff like that, I mean, obviously, you just kind of, okay, you just kind of got to reset yourself and away you go and back to work. So, you know, it's like I said, it's one of those things that, you know, you remember your first NHL goal. There's certain things that you can just kind of pick off your brain like that, like what you remember. That was one of the things. And then my first goal was also, you know, a nice thing. I'll never forget that, and getting the puck. And kind of that was kind of a thing I said, well, I could look up and say that, you know, when you score your first goal, not only did you get in your first game, but when you score your first goal, it's also a nice, you know, tribute to yourself that you're there.
Was it a nice goal?
Yes.
Is there video?
I'm not going to tell you about it, but it was a nice goal. Mark Reeds was he assisted on it. It was in Hartford against Mike Liut. So I remember the goal and how it all happened, and it seems like everything started. It was in slow motion. When things like that happen, it just seems like everything was like slowed right down for you until it happened, and then all of a sudden it gets live again. You know, it's like it was kind of it was great like, feeling.
It's a memory like a movie.
Yeah.
Right there. Are there any other moments that slowed down for you, whether it be lifting up a Mann Cup trophy, a Minto Cup trophy, or any other championship moments? Are there moments that you can really reflect on just more clear than others?
Well, I think my first year of pro hockey, when I played with the Peoria Rivermen there after the St. Louis Blues camp, and when you're playing with all these guys, like I was 19, I believe at the time, maybe just turning 20, and you're playing against these guys that are mid-20s to 30, and maybe some of them even in their early 40s, or early 30s, but playing against them, and I just kind of thought that the team that we had there that year, because I think St. Louis only gave us a handful of players. And I don't know, I thought everybody might have thought we were a bunch of misfits out there for the guys that we had. And the city of Peoria owned the team that year. And then it was kind of the best thing of all is that they set up a bonus program for the players, that number of wins, number this and that, and how many, it was just like the system was like, oh, they didn't expect us to hit any of those. Well, we end up coming in first, and we end up winning the Turner Cup. So at the end of the year, the bonuses that we got, like it almost matched what I made that whole year, and it was kind of like, thank God, you know, because back in those days you didn't make a lot of money.
Property taxes went up in Peoria the next year.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm sure something did, but it was just that it was the way that we all came together that year, and the guys and the nicknames of all the players that you play with, and there's still a bunch of them now that I'm still in contact with, that they're either moved back to Canada or they've moved somewhere in the States, but it's you know, I just out of the blue, I'll just say, oh, I got to give Hammer a call, you know, because, you know, he was our tough guy and he was a kind of funny guy, and now he's living out in Las Vegas, you know, like he's moved around and stuff like that, and it's just yeah. So some of the things like that, when you see these guys that I'm sure no one starting that year thought we were going to win the championship, but when we did, everybody just had this moment, you know, like, you know, who would have thought?
Yeah. Is that the reason why you went back at the end of your hockey career to play another, is it like 7 seasons?
Six more years I went back there for. That was one of the reasons, because I was able to had some roots there, and then we had the kids that were starting school, so I didn't want to be moving around. So when I knew that my NHL career was kind of at the end, and I had the chance to go back there and play, and become a player assistant coachman. But I wanted my kids to stay in an area where they could actually stay at the same school, meet new friends, and have friends for, you know, 6-7 years. So it was actually hard when we actually moved back to Peterborough after I decided to retire, that my kids had to start all over again. You know, and unfortunately for my young lad, who's 35 now, he was 10 when we moved back, and you know, he didn't, other than him and I playing lacrosse and playing catch in the backyard, he didn't play lacrosse. But he got right into it when he got home there, and he picked it up real quick. So it was, you know, he kind of wanted to be like the rest of his cousins and stuff like that, and play at the level as them. But unfortunately, he didn't get a chance to start when he was 3 or 4 years old. So, but like I said, it's. But moving back, I wanted everybody to be back around their families. Everything's good now, of course, after 25 years later. But it's, you know, it's. You just hope you made the right choices.
And your number 9 right here, that is retired in Peoria.
Yep. It's we've been back there quite a few times. They've brought me back for special nights that they've had and stuff like that. And they've got the jerseys. Well, looks like jersey, but it's a big number 9 up in the one wall of the arena, and it's a beautiful rink down in Peoria that they have there too. And so it's always nice to go back there. People are glad to see me, even though we're all getting old. But it's nice.
How much of an honor was that? Just knowing that you're going to be enshrined and one of a few players that are being honored in this way in the entire franchise history, where hundreds and hundreds have actually filtered through. How much did that mean?
Well, it meant a lot. Like when we first started there, I think Peoria had only had a pro hockey team 1 year before that. So when we got there and went in the cup that first year, it was a lot for the city of Peoria. Like Peoria is a farm area. They have a Caterpillar plant there. I mean, it's a little diverse type of city and surroundings and stuff like that. So, but it's interesting to meet all the different people that jumped on board. And then, they have I think it's about a 13,000 seat arena that having that full and having the people that were there. And then every year, the people that you saw when I went back there after my NHL career, the same people were season ticket holders, and they wanted to be your friend, and they wanted to always talk to you. And I made it a point to make sure that we always interacted, and so it's kind of nice. My wife and I still talk to people back in Peoria, and it's nice.
And you were a player coach, which is not a thing anymore, but it's infamous for a lot of people because of Reg Dunlop from Slapshot.
Yeah.
So
I felt like that sometimes.
Did you? Okay.
Oh yeah. When I got to I guess I was about 36, 37, I guess. But when I was 35, 36, when I retired, I kind of felt like Reg Dunlop. All these kids that were playing in it was the East Coast Hockey League then. They were all 19, 20, 21 years old. They were all fairly young. So it was, I did feel that. And being a player assistant coach, I didn't think I was going to play as much as I did. I thought I'd kind of do the coaching more and work my way into that. But just because with injuries and the amount of players that you only have down there and salaries, because it was a really salary tight league, I played a lot more than what I expected. Yeah, after a while and doing the bus rides where you're on a bus halfway across the states to get to a game, and we did play in Johnstown too, which was part of the league back then. Like those are the nights I thought I was Reggie. Yeah.
That had to, the line that he walks is a hard one. In a real life line that you had to walk, trying to balance coaching and playing, and you're at the end of your career. I know you have to kind of lead by example. Did you feel like you could still lead by example with your play at that time, or was that hard for you? I don't know where you were at in terms of...
Yeah, I could still. I mean, obviously, my main goal was to help the younger players that were there, and obviously have a team that we won more than we lost too. I mean, no one likes to lose. So, but yeah, I mean, I tried to help the young guys as much as I could at that time, and it was hard when you're you're trying to coach them in practice, but play with them in the game, and it was hard to put the both together sometimes. But hopefully I did an okay job.
Did Johnstown match the movie?
I think the only thing I saw similar was that when you went onto the ice, it was like 3 feet drop from the actual coming up from the dressing room down to the ice. It was like 3 feet, so you had to make sure you didn't fall.
Okay. I remember that in Barrie, actually, where the Barrie Flyers used to play. They had that drop as well.
The big drop.
The old arenas.
Yeah.
What was it like going from NHL, where you're, I'm guessing, on planes most of the time, back to the AHL for such a long stint, or pardon me, the IHL and ECHL?
Well, yeah. I mean, the biggest thing is that you pack your bag after a game. The trainers pick it up. They put it on a cart. They take it to the bus. Or a van, and they take it to the airport. They put it. Basically, everything's done for you. It's nice, but I mean, at the same time, it's like you did it, and you kind of have to move on. And I think as I got older and these longer bus rides, it got difficult with your body, especially when you're playing. It gets awful tough when you're trying to sleep on a bus when you're driving 12 to 15 hours to a game. So Yeah, it just kind of caught up after a while, and I just had to make a decision that, that's when you look back and you say, okay, 15 years of pro hockey just went by, and you wonder where it went. Where when you're doing it, it goes so slow, but when you're done, it seems like it's gone by so fast.
What was your interest in continuing in the game in a different capacity once you got to that bridge?
Well, you know what? I mean, I actually, everybody thought that I would be a good coach and stuff like that, but at the same time, one of the reasons that I wanted to stop was to travel and be home more, be with the kids more as they were getting to the age that they were getting. So I just had to turn the page and say, okay, what's the next chapter? So, and that's what I decided to do.
It's a big decision to have to make, having hockey have been your whole life up until, I guess, a tough point when you're in your late 30s. So you transition out of that, and how long did it take you before you were happy away from the game, or was that a right away thing?
Yeah, it was a right away thing.
Good.
You know, I think maybe there's not a lot of guys, but I kind of knew. What my body was telling me. It was just saying, okay, you can't keep doing this anymore. Even though you kind of thought maybe you'd like to, but I think you just come to an end, and it's just like, okay, you have to say no. And I knew my body couldn't do it another year. So like I said, I was really happy with the amount of time and the career that I had, and sure, could stretch it out, but if you try and do something for longer than what you really want to do, sometimes things don't turn out. And I just thought if I was healthy at the time, it was a good time to do it.
You sound like a guy who likes to be planted and likes to have his home base. Peoria is one of them. Peterborough is one of them. And then in your NHL career, shifting from team to team, just take me through that. I don't know, were you traded? Were you signing when you were going from team to team? What was that life like?
Yeah, that was the hard part. And my wife would be the first one to tell you. She moved a lot, and she had to pack up a lot. And when I was traded, so I would get traded. I was in Peoria. So when I played with St. Louis, I was actually down with Peoria in the farm system when they traded me to Winnipeg. So I got home from a road trip, and that's when they told me, they said, you got traded to Winnipeg. And so basically I just packed as much clothes as I thought I needed, and then I left my wife and kids in Peoria, then basically met them at the end, because it was at the end of the year. So they basically packed up and moved everything back to Peterborough, and then I think my wife came out with the kids and stayed with me in Winnipeg. And then after that, I was there for 3 years, and then I got traded from Winnipeg to Boston, and then was at Boston's training camp, where our last 2 exhibition games were against Philadelphia, and one of their guys broke their foot, and I was left on waivers by Boston, and Philly picked me up. So I spent my last NHL year in Philly. So again, the move from Boston, which my wife and my kids were with me, and then when I got moved over to Philly, they had to pack up there again and move her stuff to Philly. So give my wife lots of credit for the moving that she had to do, and especially with two children.
What was your favorite road trip in the NHL?
Everybody talks about Winnipeg being cold, which it is, but we'd for some reason back in the day they'd make the trip out to O.L.A. and they'd play 2 games. We'd be out there for 4 days and we'd play 2 games. So I mean, when you're in middle of winter in Winnipeg and you get a chance to go to the palm trees in California, those are the road trips you remember. So it's kind of nice that you get a chance to go out there in the nice warm weather and things like that. So, and then I always loved the trips back to Toronto, because my parents could come to the game and my brothers or family. So that usually happened quite a bit, where the family would come to the games in Toronto, and I get the chance to see them during the year, because the seasons were a long year. When you do think about the practicing every day, traveling, playing, they are long seasons.
Were you winning a lot of games in LA?
When you go on a road trip like that, it's kind of funny. You always want to get a split. Like when you go out there, you want to win one of the 2. If you win both, it's a bonus. You go on a 4 or 5 game road trip, which we did a lot with Winnipeg. You want to come out of there like 3-2. If you can come out with a 50 or 500 record or better, those are always good road trips.
Now, there are always coaches that you love and coaches that you hate. I've heard different stories from talking to people. Were there coaches that were just beyond? A lot of stories about coaches that just are out there. Did you experience any of that in the NHL?
I would have liked to have gone to a couple of them and said, how come you're not playing me as much as I should be? But I didn't. That's hard to do. But no, they were all pretty good. I mean, I think to a certain extent, most coaches, they have people that they have to answer to, which are usually the general managers and stuff like that, which to a certain extent, a lot of the general managers are telling the coaches who they want to be on, who they want to play, who should be playing with who. And to a certain extent, that happens a lot in the league, I think. But, you just, like I said, you played as much as you think you should play, and you try and get their, if you go out and play well, hopefully they reward you for it.
Yeah. And I ask this every time I get a chance to interview somebody who's spent time in the NHL like you have. You have to know who was the most impressive hockey player you ever saw, because we're talking the best in the world at this point in time. So in your career, who was the most impressive player you ever came across?
Obviously, like Gretzky was, like some of the stuff that he did, seeing it at ice level is one thing, seeing it on a TV is another. But he just seemed, he's got one of those 10 senses. He just knows where everybody is, and he knows where the puck's going. And that's obviously since why he did so well. Messier was also a good player. I mean, when he wanted to play rough, I mean, he was a solid boy. You never seen him on the ice unless someone tripped him, but he's a solid guy to play against. I got hit by him once that I made sure that he didn't know that it hurt, but he rocked me pretty good and lost my wind a little bit, but I made it to the bench without him knowing that I was hurt. But yeah, there's lots of players out there, guys that I played with that at that time that you went, oh, gee, that's pretty good. He's got a good shot. Yeah. And Brett Hall, I played with him in St. Louis. It was kind of funny when he came from St. Louis he came to St. Louis from Calgary. I believe at the time him and I were making the same money. Didn't end up that way. But obviously he went on to be obviously the show off that the prolific goal scorer that he was, like his dad was, and meeting his dad, because his dad always tried to meet up with him on the road wherever Brett was, and so it was interesting, some of the people that you ran into through players and guys that you played with.
Yeah, they're from Belleville, right? They're from
down that way,
close to Peterborough, so there'd be some recognition there for sure. When you're going through all that and you're seeing your idols, did you ever have to? Well, you're seeing your idols in a guy like the Golden Jet right there, but when you're playing against guys like Gretzky, did you have to stop yourself? Like, I don't know what it's like to be in that position, but when you're seeing these guys who are legends of the game and you know what's happening right in front of you, is it easy to put yourself in there and just play against them, or do they have almost an aura where you act different around them?
Yeah, you know what? They do have an aura. I mean, obviously one of the things is that you always, I mean, I had a little incident with Gretzky one time, and I was basically told that don't say anything bad about him. I said, well, I wouldn't say anything bad about him. He's the best player in the game. But I just wanted to make sure he knew I was on the ice with him. That's all. And it was kind of a funny thing that I said that, because I think he knew that I was on the ice, and I just wanted to make sure that Doug Evans is on the ice with Wayne Gretzky. Biggest thing when you played against Edmonton is that you wanted to keep the game close and have some kind of a chance at the end of it that you just might win. Yeah. And that didn't happen a lot with the teams that they had, and you just wanted to, and when you were on the ice, you just didn't want to get scored against. So it was the plus minus thing, right? You wanted that was really important back then. You didn't want to be like -5 after that game, because you were playing against all these guys that could score anytime they wanted to. But it was like I said, it was a nice thing to have a chance to play against guys like that.
What was the incident with Gretzky? Was it just?
We just had a little run-in. He turned into me and I turned into him, and a big thing was made out of it, and I got jumped by 3 guys, and so it was really nothing.
Sorry, Mr. Gretzky. Good to see you there.
Yeah.
But at your size, when you were playing, what weight were you playing at?
175.
Okay, so 5'9", 175. When the game was fast then, but there were a lot of, I guess, bigger guys who would not be shy to throw their weight around. How hard was that to navigate at your size with your style of play?
I just tried to make them miss me as much as possible. Yeah. I always said to myself, hit them before they hit you, because obviously speed kills. If you get a little bit of speed going at a bigger guy, you get a good chance of knocking him down. And that's why I just tried to hit them before they hit you, and hopefully they don't come back after you.
And how often did they?
Well, they did.
Yeah.
I mean, one way, there was a lot of, I always used to tell people there was a lot of verbal abuse back in the day. Like people didn't necessarily fight, but there was a lot more fighting then than there is now, of course. But there was a lot more verbal abuse in each other than there was fighting. It was like almost like a fight, but it's whoever got the last word in. And depending on what that word was, that seemed to be the big thing.
How did you prepare your chirping then for the game? I know there are some guys who have talked to, they say they have their go-to lines so they can be quick with them right off the bat.
Yeah.
Did you do the same thing, or were you just flying off the cuff?
Yeah, whatever came to my mind, I said. And sometimes it wasn't the right thing, but whatever. I mean, it's everybody kind of knew. And it's, when the game's over, the game's over. And it's like a lot of times, whether it was L.A. or all these other teams, like L.A. especially, L.A., I can remember after one of the games, Marty McSorley, that's when Marty McSorley and all them went to L.A. and stuff like that. So they have the Forum Club, which is attached right to the arena where all the players, even the visiting players, go up to and have a drink, had a beer after the game. So I mean, I went up there and shot, Marty and I had a big conversation because I know Marty from when he played with Belleville back in the day, and saw him every year at Ricky Mahar's golf tournament down there. And we chatted it all up and stuff like that. And he'd say to me, he goes, you know, Doug, you gotta watch what you're doing out there. You know, you're not supposed to hit Mr. Gretzky. And I said, I know, Marty, but you know, I just want him to know who I am. He was just laugh, right? It was just kind of, but it was funny when the game was over. It's like everybody was friends again. Yeah. It's just that different when the puck's dropped, game face, and then when it's over, everybody's kind of back to, you know, friends. So it's kind of I think to a certain extent, it's still like that in the game, but you know, everybody, you want to win because they have to win.
Yeah. The friendship probably filters more onto the ice than it used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I played against my brother Kevin in the minors one time, and my parents happened to go to Kalamazoo to watch the game when I was with Peoria, and I cut him open over the eye, and he came over and said, "What do you do that for?" I says, "Well, what were you trying to hit me for?"
How'd you cut him?
I jumped over him and I gave him the stick, and he got a few stitches. But
the butt end of the stick?
No, just my shaft, my
Okay,
stick.
gotcha.
Made it look. I didn't even get a penalty because I just made it look like he was trying to miss him, but I wasn't. So anyways,
The O.L.A.
but they beat us that game, so everything, he was fine after the game, other than 5 or 6 stitches. So
That's brotherly love.
yeah.
And we're going to revisit Peterborough now. I think we've touched on your NHL career, a great career, your pro hockey career, and where you went out on the road. But those 2 jerseys behind you, I'm thinking probably mean just as much as any NHL jersey, the
Yep.
Lakers jersey and the Petes jersey. Growing up playing those 2 sports in Peterborough, the Evans name is synonymous with both the Lakers and the Petes. What's it like growing up in that environment? I know it's different now than it was then. You maybe didn't realize what it was going to become in another 20, 30 years. But it's synonymous with both those 2 teams, the 2 major sports teams in this town, which is, I'd say, a major sports city.
Yeah.
What's it like carrying that name around?
Well, I was very lucky, obviously, because not a lot of local players get a chance to play with the Petes, and I was very lucky to be one of the ones that were able to play here and thrive during that time. Again, it all started. I remember when I was a kid, when my brother Paul played with the Petes.
Yeah.
I used to. Well, I think they got 2 tickets for every game, and I know that I used to get one. I'd take the bus, come down and watch the game. Sometimes I come with my grandmother. We both come down and watch the game, take the city bus down here, take the city bus home. But I just remember like sitting up in the corner watching the Petes back then, you know, the Doug Jarvises and all those guys back when my brother Paul played, and I said like, oh, I'd like to have all these people in the stands watch me out there someday. And again, it just, some things happen, some things don't. Maybe I did something right in life that everything kind of happened for me the way I hoped it did, and yeah, it just everything just went well for me.
Yeah, and again, that name, you're watching the Mann Cup this year, and it seems like there's an Evans that's going to be out there scoring a point on almost every single scoring play.
Yeah.
And that continues. If you just watch the news here, you'll see an Evans named in almost every sportscast. What is it about your family?
You know, it's like I said, we had 6 boys in our family, and I guess there's just lots of the brothers that are having boys, and now there's a lot of the nephews that are having kids and they're having boys, and so hopefully, you know, we may not be here, but hopefully down the road in 20 years or 30 years that there's going to be another bunch of Evanses coming up that keep helping out the sports in Peterborough the way that we've had a chance to do ourselves. And, you know, it's like, I know we're very proud of it, and we're very proud of our kids and my nephews and everybody else that's been able to do it, to play to the potential that they've been able to, and the rewards they've gotten for it. You know, like with Shawnee and Turner this year with the Lakers, and you know, I mean, 5-man cups or whatever Shawnee's won now, and it's phenomenal to be able to play the game as long as he has. I mean, I know he's kind of getting toward the end of his playing career now too, but it's just getting that chance to do it and being able to win it with the right bunch of guys that they have on the team. It's a big thing.
What was it like winning a championship in Peterborough?
It was good. I mean, like I said, Peterborough's a small town. It's everybody knows everybody. It's funny, you could talk to somebody, oh yeah, I remember that, so-and-so, and I've talked to people because my mother came from Durrell, my in-laws come, I think everybody in Peterborough came from Durrell, Warsaw area at one time, and it's just growing from there, but because everybody's either related to everybody or everybody knows everybody. And back in the day when you had the GE and Outboard Marine and like those were the big factories, West Clocks, things like that. Like I said, it's funny just to see everybody that someone can say something about you. I remember watching you back when you played here, and it's just one of those things. It's great for Peterborough to be the kind of city that we are, and everybody's so friendly too, right? I mean, it's I think sports brings everybody together in one way or another, and we've been lucky to be able to do that here.
When you peeled those jerseys or put them on for the first time, was it a sense of honor and pride? I know that the Petes jersey specifically, that number 11, is tied back to another story as well, the passing of a Petes player, and the jersey had been put on the shelf, and then you got the number 11. Why was the number 11 important to you as well?
Because I couldn't get 9.
Because you couldn't get 9, okay.
Yeah, I mean, ironically, I mean, I just, it was a number they gave me.
Okay.
It's, I'd heard the story and stuff like that, but I just said, look, I don't know, I mean, if I can't get 9, then I'll take whatever else is available. And every, obviously in lacrosse, I wore 9 with the juniors lacrosse team. I wore 9 pretty well all the way up as a kid. And then that's why I wanted 9 for the Petes, but I couldn't get it. And I wore 9 in Peoria. But you know, when you get to certain levels, whatever number they give you is going to work, right? So, but yeah, it's just, that's when you started with 9. 9 was a good number, and it seemed to work for me. And then with the Petes wearing 11, it just was, you know, it's really, and really the one reason was I couldn't get number 9 to wear at the time, so it worked out.
All right, so the Lakers jerseys, the Petes jerseys, do you have them hanging around your house at all, or is it just something that you just know is around you in Peterborough?
I do have some jerseys at home. I have the Jets jersey, I have a Flyers jersey, I have a lacrosse one, and I have a Rivermen one in a plaque, the one that they gave me the night that they retired my number and stuff like that. So yeah, I got them around the house. Some of them are just getting dusty, but the odd time I do open up the closet and reminisce a little bit. But you know, it's nice to have been lucky enough to have a career like I did, and have a lot of good memories about it.
And let's say 20, 30 years, when people are looking at your plaque in the Hall of Fame, what do you want people to say the type of player Doug Evans was, or the type of athlete he was?
Well, I think if there's anybody around that, if anybody asks that question, they'll tell them what kind of a player Doug Evans was. I mean, he was a scrappy player, but he could score. I like to think that I was able to do a little bit of everything, play good defense, offense, and I always tried to be as much of an all-around player as I could be.
And what do you think you've meant to the Peterborough sports scene?
Well, what was that, the old saying there, blood, sweat, and tears? I know that I've sweated a lot, I've bled a lot, and I've cried a lot. So, and most of the crying has been tears of joy with winning championships.
All right, so Doug, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for sharing your stories. It was great learning about your sports career.
Thank you very much.